Hello, my lovelies. You have 7 seconds. 7 seconds. Princeton has done a research study, whatever you want to call it, because my brain is not giving me words right now. It's been too busy a day. But Princeton did a study and they found out that you have literally 1/10, 1/10 of a second to make that first impression. And typically that first impression will stick. In real estate, people have decided what they think of your house before they even step in the door. You literally have 7 seconds. 7 seconds for them to decide what they want about your house. My lovelies, welcome back to True Talk Tuesday. My name is Shalisa Muehlberger, and I'm a realtor with S&D Real Estate. Sorry, I have been absolutely on the go today. So my brain is thinking 500 things at one time. So if I slip up on my words, sorry. You'll still get the message though, right? You'll still get the message. If you are here, as always, let me know in the comments, say hello. If you've got questions, that's also why I'm here. As we go along, you might say, hey, I have a story about this. Feel free to put it into the comments. I might ask you for a few things. Because it has been such a busy, busy week, I made notes for myself. Why has it been such a busy week? I have amazing buyers that I am loving showing homes to. It happens to be one of my former kiddos, which makes me even more excited. So they're finding their first home. And matter of fact, I rushed back home to get here from doing a showing for them. And so this information is really fresh on our minds right now because it is. We've looked at a couple of different homes, and there have been homes that we've walked into that we kind of had already made up our mind about. I don't make up my mind, right? It's them, whatever they want to do. But there are certain things that when we approach it, I start tallying up in my head. What if it has this? What if it has that? So this is what this show is going to be about tonight, is we're going to talk about what that pre-impression, what does that do, right? And what are the things that we can do that are cheap if we're selling our house? What can we do to make it sell faster? What can we do so that way the first impression isn't all of these things? All right. So the first thing, like I said, Princeton, man, they did this study and they found out that yeah, you literally have a tenth of a second before you know that person, right? People see my green hair, right? It's the first impression. It tells me everything I need to know because your first impression of me also tells me how I need to speak to you. It is an interesting fact when people see me, they're going to be like, oh, you got green hair, right? I also have tattoos. And so some people, their first impression of me would be that I am not as intelligent as I am. But I am, right? I have a bachelor's degree in secondary English education. I have a master's degree in Gothic literature, and I have passed my real estate license the first try, which a lot of people don't. So I have some intelligence, right? I might not always show it because brain fog is a thing. But I am highly intelligent. But if people look at me with my green hair and they're going to be like, oh, so it might cost me some business, right? Because of that first impression. Same can be said about selling your house. That first impression is going to be the thing that does sell your house. One of the things that we talk about with first impressions is something called an emotional anchor. All right. Emotional anchors are that feeling that we get when we first see something or first meet someone, right? Think about it this way. The strange guy that you work with, right? Like the very first impression, you were like, man, that guy's weird. And then you get to know him and he's not really weird, but you still refer to him as the strange guy, right? When you're talking to people in your household and you're like, oh, me and the strange guy, right? That was a first impression, and that was an emotional anchor. You had a feeling, and feelings will anchor us more so than logic, it seems like, right? If we have some type of gut feeling, most of the time we're gonna go with that gut feeling. So when people have a first impression of your home, they're creating an emotional anchor. If you're selling your home, we want that emotional anchor to be a good one, right? Right. That's what we want. We want it to be a good one. Good signals that people get from these first impressions, by the way. Oh, before we get into the good signals, I am really like hyper curious. Hyper curious. What is if you have bought a home, right? I want to know what is the worst first impression you've ever had. Like leave me a comment and tell me what's the worst first impression and I'll give you a high five for the for whoever wins. But I want to know because there's been some doozies. I will share mine later, but there's been some doozies where the first impression, um, one was wrong. My first impression was wrong entirely, and then there was one where my first impression was absolutely correct. All right, so we'll talk about those two later. But what are people saying when they see things? What are good signals that go off in people's heads, right? First of all, I say this to all my sellers for the inside and out. We want to depersonalize things, right? We don't want our likes to be out there because not everybody likes what we like. So but good signals are like you've swept the porch off, right? You swept the driveway. The driveway has been maybe pressure washed, right? You don't have all the speckling in the dark because we're in Florida and we have a lot of rain, right? Typically, we're in a drought right now. But we typically have a lot of rain, so we might see a lot of moisture buildup on concrete. We might have oil stains on concrete. So one of the good things that you can do is, make sure that's swept, make sure that's cleaned, right? Why? Why is just sweeping off your driveway? Seriously, just sweeping off your driveway and making sure things are clean out there. You know what it does? The buyer goes in their head subconsciously, if they're taking care of the small things, then they're taking care of the big things. That's what happens. That's what happens. People assume if you are so detailed oriented that even the smallest thing matters to you, then that means you've taken care and have had maintained your HVAC unit, right? That means that you've taken care of the roof. You have made sure if you've got a septic tank, right? You've made sure that the septic tank has been pumped and taken care of. If you have a well, the well pump has been taken care of, right? These small things tell buyers, oh, their house mattered to them. They took care of that. So if they take care of it, then it all should be okay, right? It all should be okay. Color, like a fresh here's the cheapest. The cheapest is paint your front door. Repaint the front door. Having a fresh coat of paint on that front door and having a crisp, clean front door, again, detail, small little detail, and it makes people think, hey, they've taken care of all the things. They've made sure that this house was going to last, right? If people walk in and see a dirty door or an unkept sidewalk, dead plants. I cannot tell you how many times dead plants have absolutely bothered my buyers, not the current ones, previous buyers. Dead plants, dude. And I'm like, you just move them, right? You just move them, we'll be fine. But they didn't. The dead plants made everything worse, it seemed like. So make sure that if you have, a nice front porch area, if you've got a nice little entryway, if you're not good with plants, don't plant them, right? But if you are, maybe a planter bed out there. Symmetry matters. Symmetry is a big thing. I am chaos queen, as you can see from back here, like all my art stuff, right? My husband is very symmetrical. He likes things to be clear lines, right? So that's typical. Most people, if you're not an artist, if you're just, a person that's slightly creative, even slightly creative people like symmetry. I think it's more, really, honestly, I think it's more of us abstract multimedia artists. I think we're the ones that are that are like, oh, let's just throw everything there. But symmetry matters. So if you've got a planter on one side of the door, put a planter on the other side of the door, right? You want to make sure that the eye has something to land on. When I taught yearbook, that was one of the things that we would talk about with yearbook pages, creating yearbook pages, is that there is a plane that your eye is going to naturally want to fall into. And if it can't fall into a natural plane, then what's going to happen is it's going to start feeling like something's off, something's wrong with this. You subconsciously, right? This is the things that just not having a clear direction for your eye to land on. That's what happens. Subconsciously, you're like, what's wrong with this? I don't feel right. And the anchoring, right? The feeling, that anchoring feeling that we're trying to correct and make to be something that they're like, oh, I really love this house. Now you've thrown it off because you put a planter on one side of the door and not the other side of the door. But in your book, we would talk about that. And on a piece of paper, like where's your eye naturally flowing? And we want to make sure that we create around it in symmetry, right? We want it to weigh the same on either side. So if it matters on print, imagine how big it matters for a house, right? We're walking into a home that you're paying anywhere from 250 to, millions of dollars homes, right? You're wanting to make sure that this house has everything that you're wanting in it. And symmetry and something being asymmetrical can cause you to have an uneasy feeling. So a seller, make sure that when you look at it, when you look at your front area, right? And that's also the first picture, by the way, guys. Like, we have to put a picture of the front door from street view, right? It has to be from the street view, what your front door looks like. That has to be number one picture. Imagine if we can't get a good picture of that, right? That's the very first thing a buyer is going to see, right? Very first thing a buyer is going to see. Um, so what can be considered other things besides like asymmetry? What is something that throws buyers off, right? And I said at the beginning of the show, I said we want to depersonalize the space. We want to depersonalize that space because of the emotional anchoring. All right? That emotional anchoring, we can't get emotionally attached to a property if we can't see ourselves in it, right? And if you've got a bunch of pictures of your family around, or you've got for instance, my house always looks like Halloween. All right, always looks like Halloween. Even the outside looks like Halloween, right? I've got pumpkins and I've got gargoyles, right? If I was to sell my house, one, I'd have to take all my Halloween stuff out. I'd have to remove everything from my yard, right? Because I want people to see themselves here. I want them to imagine their gnome army, all right? And if you've got a gnome army, yeah, you're going to have to remove it, right? I love gnomes. I do. I've got a couple of mine in my backyard. I go up to Rock City and try to buy as many as I possibly can every time I go up there because they're dang cute, right? But not every buyer likes a gnome army. So you're going to have to remove it, right? Sarah, animal smell. Yeah. And I have been into a showing where I have smelled the animal smell before I get into the house. That first impression, no bueno, right? That's no good at all. My buyers, they didn't spend but maybe 2 minutes in the home, right? They had already made up their mind when we were outside and they could smell that smell. They had already made up their mind, not doing it, not doing it at all. How do you solve that? There are people that can remediate smells, but sometimes that remediation means that you have to take it all the way down to like studs. The drywall might have completely seeped in that smell. So there are people that can do it. That wouldn't be a necessarily cheap fix, right? Don't listen to the people that say, "Oh, you can just throw paint over it and it'll take the smell away." It won't. I promise you, it does not. I've been in houses that's been the case, and no, that does not. Um, I've already talked about dead plants by the door, and I've told you why, right? These things, these small little details, they say to the buyer, "You don't care. You've already given up," right? If your plants are dead, they don't think you're just bad with plants, right? They don't think that. They think, "Oh, you don't care." So if you don't care about a plant on the outside, then I guess you didn't care about the dripping in the sink, right? I guess you didn't care about the little drips in the faucet underneath the bathroom sink, right? Where now all of the boards are warped because they're wet. That's what they're going to think. And they're going to start looking for all of those things. They're going to start nitpicking all of those things. So things that if you had given them a good emotional anchor, if you had given them a reason where they're like, "Oh, this is it." They're looking at the outside of your house saying, "This is it," right? Outside of your house going, "This is the home. I love this." They walk in, they see a sink dripping. They're like, "Oh, that's an easy fix. That's probably just a little washer that needs to be replaced," right? They're not worried about it. But if you've given them a bad emotional anchor, they're going to nitpick everything. They're gonna look at, "Oh, is that a crack in the ceiling? Is it settling wrong? What do you think?" Instead of going, "Oh, they probably just had, like, repaint because of moving the attic door," which has happened before. I've been in a house where they moved the attic door, and literally you could see the square, but because my buyers did not have a good emotional anchor on that house, they immediately thought that it was because of, like, rain damage, like, there was some type of, um, incident with the roof. They went to worst case scenario, right? And when I called the listing agent and found out what it was, it's an easy thing, right? But because my people did not have a good emotional anchor to that house, they assumed the worst, right? So make sure that you're giving them that good emotional anchor so that dead plants and weird paint won't make them think the worst. Absolutely. Here's another one. I love y'all. And I've got weird stuff in my yard. I do. I do, right? If you've got lights out, like we're talking about Christmas lights, right? If you got those in your yard, and it's March now, right, guys? It's March. You do you, boo. You do you, right? But if you're trying to sell that house, you gotta get those lights up. You better get those lights up. That's all I gotta say. Get those lights up. I had to take a sip of drink. All right. We're just moving right along. Moving right along. Um, like I said, this week has been super busy. I've got a lot of buyers looking at different houses. So this matters. This really does matter. If you're thinking about selling your house, I will tell you this, and I know Sarah's on right now. Sarah, feel free to back me up. We have had a influx of people coming in, and it typically happens in spring. Yes, right. We have a spring season where a lot of buyers come into the market. But I also think that there are things happening that are making people more interested in buying homes. Um, we've seen an influx of buyers. So if you're thinking of selling your house, like this is stuff that you really need to think about before we sit down and talk, right? Um, here are some low cost, high impact things that you can do to increase that emotional anchor, right? We want to increase that emotional anchor. So the first thing I want you to do is, like I said, paint the door. Paint the door. And it can even be a bold color, right? I have seen some really cute black and white homes, like where they do these high contrast, right? And there's like a turquoise door. Gorgeous. Gorgeous, right? Again, gorgeous because I'm weird, right? But my buyers loved it. my buyers were like, "Oh, that is so cute. I love that. I love the contrast of colors." Their emotional anchor, instant, right? And it's door paint. Okay. Power wash everything, driveway, sidewalks. If you could power wash the side of your home, because again, we're Florida, so when it rains, things can splash up onto stucco or splash up onto siding. Power wash it, just get it all cleaned up, right? We want to make sure everything's cleaned up. Mulch, believe it or not, mulching your landscaping beds, right? And making sure there's crisp lines with that mulch. People lose it. They're like, "Oh, I love it. This is great." It's that emotional anchor again. You're hitting that, "Oh, they've taken care of the small things, so they must be taking care of all the big things, and this house is super cute. I love it." They're gonna walk in now, and they're not gonna listen for the dripping, right? They're not gonna listen and look for paint chips, right? They're not gonna look for all the things that they would have looked for in other houses, right? Even if it smells slightly. I've been with buyers that they love the outside so much that the inside smelling like cigarette smoke was no problem. They can clean it. I'm like, "Are you sure?" Okay. If this is the one, this is the one, all right? Um, why are it dead? Oh my goodness. I just figured out something. Sorry, I was looking at, hey, Caitlin. I was looking at the comments and I saw where I can click on when I hovered over a comment, it said show. And I was like, what is that? What are you talking about, show? So, like, I can do this now. That's Caitlin. Caitlin, your comment's now up on my screen. um, But you say clean the yard if you have dogs. Yes. Oh, I just met, oh my goodness, where's his card? Oh, I'm gonna have to link it somehow. I'm gonna have to put it on my social media. Um, there is a guy that I met at one of the markets. He owns a business, and his business is yard cleanup for animals, specifically like dogs that haven't that you haven't cleaned the yard for, right? So they will actually come out and they will clean the yard, and I think they said they also use, like, a sanitizer on the yard? I don't know. There was a lot of noise, and I can't remember. But I'll have to link their Instagram because they were super cool people. They absolutely love what they do. They love helping people be able to show their homes at best. If you even have a birthday party or some type of get together and you just don't have time to get out there and clean up after your dog, they will do that. If I love the fact that people with disabilities and you have a service dog, sometimes people with disabilities cannot clean up after those dogs, and so it's nice to have a service like that. um yeah, Sarah, the guy that we met. Hold on. The guy that we met, and he was the poop scoop dude. Yes, the poop scoop dude. It was like Paw something. I'm gonna look him up on Instagram real quick, guys. Hold with me, all right? Uh, Paw. Yes. All right. So they're called Positive Scooper LLC. Positive Paw, like Paw, right? PAW. Positive Scooper LLC. And you got the right one when you see that page, right? The little doggy on there, right? Super cool people. And this is a way for sellers to make sure that first impression is great, right? You have a service come out and clean up the yard real quick if you have got animals. So yes, absolutely. The other thing is, like we've said before, add a plant, a living one. Yes, this card has a German Shepherd on it, Sarah. Plant some plants, even if they're in just pots, right? Put them around symmetrically. Remember that, right? You got to make sure that you've got one set of roses on one side, make sure there's a set of roses on the other side, right? Which I wouldn't go buy roses. I would buy like marigolds, right? Just saying, because marigolds will also help keep away like mosquitoes from that front door. Hey, 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 right? Okay. All right. You see what I'm saying? All right. Sorry. Oh. All right. Things that I would say aren't worth it. Do not overhaul the landscape. Excuse me. It's like, let me get some water in my system. Okay. I wouldn't overhaul the landscape unless like you've had serious issues. If you've got mainly sand in the front yard or mainly sand in the backyard, I have seen where putting in sod does help, right? It makes the aesthetic of the home more pleasing than seeing barren land. But if you've got grass and that's pretty much it, don't worry about it. Just make sure the grass is mowed. Just make sure the grass is mowed. Um, Here in Central Florida, we can't water our grass, so but once a week. So I tell my buyers, and I hope other people do, but again, you've got the 7 seconds, right? And the 7 seconds can say, "Oh, they have a brown grass, so obviously they don't care about the way their home looks." Especially if they're like an out of town, out of state buyer, right? And they're coming in to see this house for the first time. They might not realize that the state of Florida is in the drought that it is in, right? I would also you can replace pretty cheaply your mailbox. Yes. Is it really worth it? I have not. I have not had a buyer come up and go, "You know what? I don't like the house because the mailbox." Like, they don't even pay attention to the mailbox. They just wanna make sure there is a mailbox, right? That's what they're wanting. Um, Repainting the entire house. Nope. Don't do it unless the paint on the outside of the house is horrible, right? It's flaking off all over the place. Or maybe you're selling your grandparents' house and your grandmother's favorite color was fuchsia, right? And so she's painted the house fuchsia. Maybe then paint it a little more neutral color. I will say if you can paint things inside of the house, if you do have a lot of bold accented colors, go ahead and paint them white, or at least a more neutral color, because I have had buyers that couldn't see past the paint, and I don't know why. I mean, it's just paint, but um, and here's a cheap thing that some people don't know. Here in Polk County, if you go to our landfill, which I think is off of Thornhill Road, um, I'm horrible with the roads, but if you go to the landfill, they have a recycling center, and part of the recycling center is that if you have extra paint, they put it over there in the recycling center. You can drive into there and you can grab the paint if you're wanting to paint something else. We use it for haunted attractions a lot because it's free. And so we go and we grab a bunch of paint so that way we can paint sets, right? But I have known people to do the same thing with their homes. They've used this free paint to paint the inside of their homes. Now sometimes you might only find like half a gallon and that ain't really going to do much, but I have gone up there and there are 5-gallon buckets that are almost completely full with eggshell white paint, right? So if you're like, I need to paint the inside of my house before I sell, but I need to save money, check out the landfill. You might be surprised. You might be surprised. So paint though, it's cheap enough. I would do it, right? Flooring. Flooring is huge. So I have a love-hate with flooring. I don't think my sellers should redo the floors because the buyers might want something different. But I have had listings and I've had buyers that because of the floors, things just didn't go the way they should, right? I had a listing where Floors weren't bad. Floors weren't bad at all. They were just dated. And there was a few little watermarks from where they had a dog, right? But it wasn't bad. That house, every time somebody walked in, it was like the floors, and I'm like, we're giving a floor credit. We're giving you the money to replace the floors, but they just couldn't see past that. And so they didn't have an emotional anchor to the house. So that's where we were. And the outside of that house too, I will say, um, we should have gone ahead and did a good cleaning and remulching of that bed, because I think that the curb appeal could have been a little bit better, and I could have, again, I'm learning through these experiences, and what I learned through this experience was that I think that the emotional anchor wasn't as strong for this house, and so they were nitpicking those floors, right? Um, I had a listing in Winter Haven, though, that the floors were worse. The carpet was bare in some sections, right? And because the sellers took the extra mile and made sure that that front looked so good, it looked so good, right? People would come in and they might mention the floors, right? They might say that they want it replaced, and then they were like, "Okay, you're offering a floor credit, no big deal." Right? So floors are a big thing. If you could, I say rip up carpet and put, linoleum down, or a nicer flooring that has a neutral coloring, because flooring can be a big deal. I don't know why, but it is, right? So if you have a house that isn't selling and you've offered a floor credit, it might be time just to redo the floor. Just redo the floor entirely. All right. Don't replace the whole exterior, blah, blah, blah. This week, what I would like for you to do, if you're thinking of selling your house, right? If you're thinking about it, I want you to go out to your driveway. I want you to stand in the road with no cars coming. All right. I didn't tell you go play in traffic. All right. Go out there, stand in the road, and look at the front of your house, right? If you were a buyer, would you buy your house? Would you look at this house and go, dang, I want this house, right? If you don't know what to change on that, DM me. All right. Oh, if you're in the Polk County, Central Florida area, I'll come out, right? And I'll look at it and go, this is what needs to happen, right? And we'll have a discussion. Just DM me and we got this. All right. All right. My lovelies. As always, this is great. I hope you've gotten some information from it. I hope that it will help your decision making. Buyers, I hope you understand that sometimes, though, you might see things and might have a negative first impression, and that's not necessarily always the case. Inspections will tell you whether you're right or not, but I totally understand if you look at things and you're like, if this isn't done, oh my God, what are they going to find in inspections? I don't want to pay $450 to know that I was right, right? So I get that. Sellers know that that's what they're thinking. That's exactly what they're thinking. All right. So even though I, as an agent, with a buyer, I can look at my buyer and go, yeah, I don't see any of those things, though. We can find them in inspection. They've already made up their mind within that first 7 seconds of seeing your house. And a lot of that is happening online even before they get to your house. All right. Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, all of them, they're searching these sites and they see that first picture. So what is that first picture telling them, and what kind of emotional anchor is your house creating for them? All right. So my lovelies, let's find out what our emotional anchors are. All right. We are done tonight. We are absolutely done tonight. I am not done for the week. Not at all. I've been very, very busy. But we are done for the evening. And like I always tell you, be happy, be safe, and know that I love you, because people can hate for no reason. I can love for no reason. All right, my lovelies. Next week, we're going to talk about pricing myths for sellers. We're going to start looking at our sellers now. because y'all got people coming. We need to get you right. All right. Good night, my lovelies.